Hello, everyone. Let's talk about managed connections today. Just a brief about me. My name is Divyank. This is what I look like in the picture, and this is what I look like in general. Um, my name is Divyank. I'm a senior solution consultant here at Sisense. Been with the company for a little over 4 years at this point. Um, I am essentially responsible for most of the enterprise implementations, essentially making sure that I'm giving out the best practices about like dashboard designs, data modeling, and things like that. That is what my primary responsibility here at Sisense is. Today, we are going to talk about a new feature that we have rolled out officially from 2023.9 called Managed Connections. Okay. So let's start. I've broken the agenda down into like three different pieces. One is obviously what it is. Why did we create it in the first place? And the second part is the how, which will be followed by like kind of a use case and a demo. It's mostly going to be a demo because the use case with managed connections is not as straightforward as it would be, let's say, when you're using something like a perspective or something, right? Because it is much more universal than that, and it has a lot more general management tips than it has to do with like use cases and things like that. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A, right? Where you guys can go ahead and ask questions. So let's first talk about what it is, right? What is connection management? So connection management, you can imagine it as a repository that holds all of the connection strings, right? It has its own connection ID. It has its own username, passwords, and all of that information is stored in a repository, right? And then these repositories or like these connections can then be shared with individual users or groups, and they can either use it or they can edit, and we can talk about all of that, right? But we can store it for live models, we can store it for ElastiCubes, we can store it for B2D, which is like our cloud data warehouse offering, if you have not heard about it, where the ElastiCubes essentially live on your cloud data warehouse, right? So it's essentially just a big box that stores all of your connections that you can share with different people, right? Why did we create it in the first place? So one of the biggest reasons of creating the connection management was to allow more data designers access to connections without actually exposing the credentials, right? That is the main factor here. So currently, in the previous implementation of Sisense, what would happen, let's say if you have a data designer and an admin and another data designer, whatever, and if somebody started working on an ElastiCube, and if anyone else wants to continue working on the ElastiCube, what you will have to do is you will have to provide the connection string, the username and password for the other user to also be able to access all of that data, right? What connection management allows you to do is you create this one-stop shop of, or like one connection string, which has the username and password, and just share it with different data designers. So now the other data designers don't need to know what the username or password or even the location of the data source is, but they can still use it. They can still import new tables, they can still switch connections and things like that. So they can do all of that without actually having the username and password. So security is of the utmost importance in this one. The next one is obviously for easy sharing of connections, because what it lets you do is, let's say I have just introduced a new data designer into my Sisense portfolio. Typically, if he wants to start working, he will need to have the connection string and username and password to start working on that. What we can do with connection management is we can share that connection with the newly created user, and when they start working on, let's say, a new ElastiCube or an existing ElastiCube, that connection will already be available for them. So this is more of like you can automate these things where you can now share the dashboards and things like that, right? The final and possibly the most important reason why we created connection management is the maintenance of connection. So we have heard this from our customers for a really long time that, hey, you know what? One thing is that if I log in, I don't know if I will see my previous connection or not. But more importantly, I have a certain security exception where I use Snowflake, and just for my own security purposes and make sure that there are no data leaks or things like that, we have to change our passwords every 3 months, right? No matter what the user is, no matter what it is, all passwords must be changed, let's say every 3 months. Imagine if there is a scenario where you have 50 ElastiCubes running off of one Snowflake instance. In such a scenario, previously, you would have to go to each of the 50 ElastiCubes, go to that connection, and then change that connection. This would be the regular process for all 50 of the ElastiCubes. Obviously, this is a lot of hassle and a lot of maintenance. What connection management allows you to do is you can take the existing connection and change that password or whatever that you have changed, right? And then save it, and it will automatically trickle down to all of the dependent ElastiCubes. So once I've made a change, once I've changed the password and saved it in my connection string or in my connection manager, it will trickle down to all of the different ElastiCubes that it is associated with. So it saves a lot of time. It's easier to maintain, right? So these are essentially the reasons why we introduce connection management. Let's talk about the how. We initially introduced the connection management feature back in 2023.6. However, that was in a closed beta, and the only way to turn it on was through the configuration manager. And you can go into the config and like toggle a setting on and so on and so forth. So it was still like kind of advanced, and that's why it was the closed beta. In 2023.7, the beta was a little widely available, and you can just turn it on from the feature management screen of Sisense in the admin section, right? From 2023.9, it is generally available and everybody has that option. It is not turned on by default yet. It is always still turned off. With the future releases, we will try and make it like turned on by default. So essentially that will make us reach like a wider audience, and it is a very effective tool. So we want the end users to know more and more about whether they have seen it before or not seen it before. And it's comparatively very easy to get ingrained with. So it's not like a very, tricky feature. It's not like a Git implementation, right? Or like something like that requires a lot of technical know-how. So as of right now, it's available in the feature management starting from 23.9, and you can turn it on. The other thing about the connection manager is that it takes approximately 10 minutes to take effect. So whenever you turn it on or turn it off, what it does in these 10 minutes is essentially it has to go back and do a lot of work in the background to see all the existing connections that are available and make it in a repository and then make sure that it is shareable. So that's what the 10 minutes it takes for. Connection management is completely reversible. So you can turn it on, you can use shared connections and so on and so forth, but you can also come back and turn it off. Once you turn it off, the shared connections go away, as well as the users who had connections existingly shared, they will not be able to see the connections just as it would be. So essentially reversing all the connection management changes that you have done. Okay. So that's pretty much about the how. So let's talk about how you create new connections. So as of today, connection management can only be accessed via the plus data icon in your ElastiCubes. So anybody who has like built a lot of ElastiCubes is very familiar with this particular icon. But when you click plus data icon, and I'll demo it shortly on how it looks different and everything, but you can manage all of your connections, whether you are creating a new shared connections or existing shared connection, or even just sharing somebody in a way. You will have to go into one of the ElastiCubes, click on the plus data, and that's where you will see the connection management screen. That connection management screen, as of today, is not available anywhere else, right? So it allows you to do three things. So this is what the new connection management screen will look like. Again, we will see this in the demo. But what it does is that you typically, if you have seen this screen before, you would have only seen like recent connections, or if you didn't have any recent connection, just a create new connection option. We have added this new shared connection piece where you can share all kinds of different data sources. It could be any data sources that is compatible with Sisense, right? Whether it be Athena, Redshift, Snowflake, MySQL, MS SQL, whatever, right? Even all the way down to a CSV. And CSV is really important. So we have customers who have like really huge sized CSVs. Let's say they have a CSV that has, I don't know, 40,000, 100,000 rows. Some have 1 million rows or whatever, right? based on how big the CSV is. With the current implementation of Sisense, what happens is that every time you want a CSV, let's say data designer A wanted that CSV, he will upload that CSV and then build the ElastiCube. So that CSV will be stored somewhere on Sisense to make sure when we are building it the next time, that CSV is available to be built, right? And then the next user wants that same CSV, but logs in with a different user, he will have to upload it again. And that will take more disk space and so on and so forth. With connection management, what would happen is I can not only create a CSV connection, but I can also share that CSV connection with somebody else, right? So in that case, I don't have to re-upload it. Somebody can directly go to that CSV and just grab it, right? It's as simple as that. That CSV lives, it's the only copy, and it works wonderfully. Okay. Sharing connections. Once you have created a connection, you will see a 3-dot menu, especially if you have created the connection or if you are an admin. I'll tell you the case where it's not visible. But if you click on the 3 dots here, you will see a few options. One of the options is called Share Connections. Once you click Share Connections, it looks pretty much like your dashboard sharing. If you've ever shared a dashboard or ElastiCube, this is what it looks like. You can search for user, you can add them, and you can give them permission if they can use connection or they can edit connection, right? And essentially just click Save and Share, and that user will be able to see it. Cool. Let's quickly jump into a demo, and I will try and show you things from scratch and how it looks and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. So this is essentially our configuration manager. This is essentially our admin screen, right? And as you can see in the admin screen, if I go to my feature management, there is an option called connection management beta. Is the size okay for everybody? Is it too small? Is it too big?
Looks good on my side.
Okay. If you guys did find it to be small, let me know. I will increase the size. But yeah, so there is connection management beta that is available in the feature management. If you click on the eye, it tells you what it is doing. It is going to migrate all the connections to connection management and all of that. And it also gives you a fair warning that it will take 10 minutes before the migration is completely. And this will work whether you are turning it on or you are turning it off. It is going to take 10 minutes approximately to be in effect. Okay. Now I'll go to the data screen. This is all from an admin section where a user has created something. So I'm going to, let's go here, right? And I see a lot of tables. That's fine. But the main important part that we are here for is plus data. So if you click on plus data, you will see a screen that will have my recent connections, my shared connections, as well as if I want to create a new connection, right? So these are all of my shared connections. That includes CSVs, that includes Redshifts, that includes Snowflake, and so on and so forth. Now let's take an example. I've also created a brand new user to give you a little more insight on this. So this is a brand new user, if I'm not wrong. Yes, from a very legitimate company called ABC. And now if I click on, let's say, plus ElastiCube here and call this, let's call it EC connection management demo, right? And I'm going to save this and I start here, right? So when I click on choose connections, remember that I am a brand new user, right? I have not created any connection. No connections have been assigned to me. I will see a very standard screen, right? Which says create a new connection, and then I can click. If I was any other user, I would have to come in, given all of this information and move out, right? What I will do now, since I've just created this user, I will go back to my previous admin screen. And now I'll start sharing connections with this user, okay? I'm going to click on share. I'm going to search for that particular user, right? And once I've done, I will give this user, I can give him 2 permissions. I can either give him or her can use connection, or I can give them like can edit connection, right? So in this case, let's give a can edit permission, but we'll try and give a few more, right? So we'll share this one and we will give this one a can use connection, and then we'll share this one and we will give them can edit is fine, right? Okay, cool. So now I'll go back to my user, whom I've just created and everything, who did not have any shared connections whatsoever, and so on and so forth. So now I'll click on plus data. Now I should see a new connection screen, which is I have a new shared connection. Surprisingly, it only has 1. I did share 3. Tech demos, am I right? Probably I didn't click the share button. that was my bad. And I'm going to go back and do it again. Yeah, it looks like I messed this one up. I'm going to click share. Yep, doesn't look like it's shared. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to click share with share, and let's give them another ElastiCube. This one is already assigned. Share, and this one is can use connection. Okay, cool. So now close it again. So I've shared 2 more connections with them, and I'm hoping that they will also show. Okay, clicking plus data. I've currently shared 3 connections, and all 3 are now available, right? So now I can choose. I was quickly talking about the 3-dot menu. So you will see the 3-dot menu for every user that has can edit permissions, right? If the user only has the can use permission where they are not allowed to see anything, what will happen is that they will not have the 3 dots. Before I talk about sharing, let's continue with now that I talked about the security and everything. Typically, if I'm selecting Snowflake, I'm greeted with this screen, right? Where I need to have the username and password as well as the connection string and so on and so forth. But for security, I don't want this to be given to my user. So I'm just going to give that connection. And now when the user clicks on that connection, since the connection is already validated and everything, they are immediately greeted with the database screen, right? And at this point, they can select the database that they want and continue from there. You can still manage the databases. That is completely on Snowflake side. So we don't control on how much data the database is showing, right? Like what all databases are the data warehouse showing. That's not something that we still control. That is still controlled on the Snowflake side in this case, where the user is tied to certain databases and they'll be able to see all of the databases that are available. So another use of connection management could be that, like if you want to limit the number of databases, you can create a different connection and share that, right? So in this case, I can just go to any database that I want to and essentially grab. So I'm just going to go to a random thing and I'll just try and show you that this particular user did not have any connections attached. The user was essentially created brand new, but I have attached the department file here, and now I should be able to build it. And once I build it, it should start building without giving me any errors that it does not know what the connection is or the location or anything like that. It knows everything. It is taking all the information from the repository, right? While that is building, let's talk about other things and what are the other capabilities of Connection Manager, right? So I'm back on my admin screen. This particular features will also be available for anybody who has can edit permissions. But what you can do is you will see that this has more than just the share option, right? So one of the option is to edit. If I click on edit, it lets me see what the location is and so on and so forth, and what the username and what the password is, and I can come change it. So one of the things that we were talking about, was that, hey, what if I just change my password? If you just change your password to a connection because of, let's say, a security rule or something else, you can just come in and edit. You can go to the password, change the password, click on save, and that's it. It will trickle down. And I will also show you an example of this. But by the time, I also want to show you that this is done and it has successfully built, even though the customer has, even though the end user has no idea what the username or what the password is, but he's able to use that connection and he can use it as long as the connection is shared with them. Cool. Yeah. So the other options, the very first option was to edit, where you can edit not only the username or password, you can also edit connection string or anything. As of right now, you cannot edit for it to go to a different database. You can only keep in the database that you are currently in. So if I'm in Redshift, I can only edit the Redshift connections. I cannot change a Redshift connection into a Snowflake connection. That is not something that I can do right now, right? I can only make sure that I have like the username or password or the location of the change, but the provider must remain the same. The other one is delete. When I click on delete, you will see that it gives me a warning and it does not let me delete the connection. So this is more of like a fail-safe that we have kept, that if you're trying to delete connection, that is using like a few ElastiCube, or even if it is not using an ElastiCube, what you will have to do is you will have to select another connection that can take place of this connection, right? I cannot just go ahead and delete it, because if I just go ahead and delete this connection, all the ElastiCubes associated with this connection will start to fail. And that is going to be problematic, right? That is not something that you want to do. So once you're trying to delete a connection, you must replace it with another connection. The other options are sharing, which we already talked about, which is just like your dashboard sharing. You take a user, you share it, so on and so forth. The last one is called dependencies. Dependencies essentially shows you where and in what ElastiCubes is this connection being used. So as of right now, I am currently using it in like 4 ElastiCubes, right? So when we talked about deleting a connection, if I deleted the connection without giving it a secondary connection, this would have automatically been, all the ElastiCubes associated to that connection would have stopped working completely. Cool. So this is pretty much all you want to know about like dependencies and all of that. Now, when I was talking about when I gave somebody a can edit permission, which is this user right here, they can still see all of these options, and that user can also delete it, right? So a lot of times what the admins would like to do is make sure that nobody else like plays with the connection or whatever, like nobody changes the password, nobody deletes it, and so on and so forth. Then you will just give the can use permission. It is pretty much the same that you want to do with like your designers and your dashboards, right? You only give can design permissions or can view permissions based on the role and what you're trying to make them do. Cool. The other thing that we can talk about is also a new feature. It's less of a new feature. It's something that you might be familiar with, but let's talk about this. Let's say I have this table called brand, and it is currently coming from Snowflake. I don't want it to come from Snowflake. So what I can do is I can go to connection settings, and instead of something called change connection that you used to see before, with just like change database and change table, it will have a new option called switch connection, which will essentially take you to the connection management screen instead of just the regular connection screen, right? So you click on switch connection, you choose the place where you want it to come from, right? And then once that is there, you select the next part, and I think it's in the BE, but we'll see. And then we'll try to switch connections from here to the database. All right. And I'm just going to search for the word brand, and I see a brand here. I want it from sample e-commerce. And I hit done. That's it. Whenever I make a change, as you can see, this everything else goes into like an unbuilt state. If it was connected before, it will get disconnected, and so on and so forth, right? So that all will happen. And now I can just build it, and instead of coming from the Snowflake, it will start, instead of coming from the Redshift, it will start pouring in data from Snowflake. So the switch connection is essentially the same as it used to work before. So there is no change in how that works and things like that. So let's talk about one more small example, and then we will open it up for questions. So the other thing that I want to talk about is our possibility where we just want to change a role, or if you want to change a username or password and things like that, and how it will trickle down to other things. So I don't have a lot of databases with me currently, but I can definitely show you something with what we have. I'm going to change this to a writer, and I'm also going to change this to a writer, right? And then I'm going to try and click save. So it will check the connection with the Snowflake database. Once it's sure that the connection works and everything, then it will also show you if you change the connections, these all dependent will also change the behavior on how it works. So let's say if you selected a database that does not have all the required tables, you will start seeing errors, right? That, hey, this table is not found, that table is not found, whatever. But if you're using just something as simple as changing the password, you can just change it how I did it right now. And then once you click on update connection, it updates it for all the ElastiCubes there. And that's it. Now you can hit close. If you have noticed, I just built this ElastiCube, but it is again in an unbuilt state. It is in an unbuilt state because it has realized that you have changed the connection, right? You have changed the connection string, you have changed the username or password, so it goes into unbuilt state. So before you can use it, you will want to build it again, right? All right. So let's talk also about like shortcomings and things like that. So one of the known shortcomings right now is obviously, which I talked about a little bit ago, and that's not a feature yet, is let's say I am a large enterprise user and I currently use Snowflake, but I had some licensing implications and now I want to move to Redshift, right? And I have planned to move all of my sources and all of my tables from Snowflake to Redshift. If I want to make the same change in Sisense, there is not a straightforward way of doing it where you can just come in here and change one part of the data. What you could potentially do is you can delete a connection and replace it with a Snowflake connection. That can work. It is still untested, but like that is the only way that you might be able to get it work. We are working on future versions, which might include this feature. So it's just still like in very early stages of development. So if everything goes through well with the QA and everything, you know how product works. And once all of that is done, you can essentially be able to do that in the future, maybe, right? So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about related to Connection Manager and how it works and so on and so forth. I will be happy to take questions from you if you have any.
And feel free to use the chat if you'd like to do that, or if you'd like to come off mute, you can certainly do that as well.
Hi, Dev. I see everyone is too shy, so I'm going to go first. Just a quick question. Will this solve the issue? Because what we've had between version upgrades, we use Sisense Cloud, and sometimes what happens if there was an upgrade, if we want to reuse a connection, or if we run a build and we want to change something to the connection that was already made in a previous version, if you right click on the on your instance that you want to change and you say connection and then change connection, it doesn't allow you to go back, because sometimes I want to go in and I can't remember the path of that I set. Let's say, for example, a CSV file that I have imported for that specific data source. Sometimes I want to, just go and see what the path of that file is, because I can't remember. And then if I go back, it shows me a blank screen, so you can't go back. Then I have to go and kind of reconfigure the whole, recreate the whole connection. So will this solve that issue? I think I did raise a ticket for that, but it's a couple of months ago, and they said that it's a known issue that it will be fixed. So I just wanted to make sure that if this will solve that issue, if you share a connection with someone, will they be able to go back and say, for instance, they want to, for a specific connection, they want to change the path to where a file is being read in. Will they be able to go back and change the path to where that file is located?
They can, but they will still not be able to see the path itself, if that's what your question is. They won't be able to see the path, but they can definitely change it. So let's say I have the sample retail CSV that currently is being used in a few things. What I can do is I can come here and I can edit it. But instead of showing me the path, what it will tell me to do is select wherever I want to do it from. Like I can give it a new access server, or I can upload a file. And wherever this CSV was used currently in whatever ElastiCubes, all the ElastiCubes will start using the new CSV, the one that you've just created as a path.
Okay, so it updates for everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. And so if you use this, the chances of you losing connection, say for instance you enable it and you disable it, you won't lose any of the connections that you've created, right? Or that you've created and saved.
You mean enable and disable connection management?
Yes. Say for instance I want to enable it and I want to disable it again. It's not going to take away any of the connections that I've already created, that I've shared.
Yeah, it will not change any connections, right? Okay. And it will not change anything for the existing ElastiCube. But what it will change is essentially if I am, so let's say I'm a data designer, okay? You gave me access to a particular connection string and I created a few created a few ElastiCubes and whatever, right? And I have it all saved for me and it is building fine, whatever. Then you go to the admin, and then you go to feature management, and then you turn off the connection management. What would happen from the next time on, my cubes will still build fine as an external user who only had access to shared connection. But I will not be able to add something new from that shared connection because that shared connection itself will not be visible to me when I click plus data.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
screen will go away. So everything that was shared with me will essentially go away if you turn it off. When
Okay.
you
So it will still work, but you just can't use it again if it's been removed.
correct. That is exactly
Okay.
right. And
Okay.
when you turn it back on again, the share should also come back.
Okay. I see. So will they be then be able to edit that connection if it is when they want to edit it for themselves? Will they be able to edit it? Say, for instance, they want to change the path of where the file is located, for instance.
Is this when it's off or when it's on?
When it's off.
If it is off, then they will not see the connection at all. So they will not see an edit option. They will essentially have to go to, let's say, Amazon Redshift and enter the credentials.
Okay, and just create some crash. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thanks. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I forgot one. Sorry, I made notes here. Is there a possibility to share connections between instances? Because we as a company, we've got two separate cloud instances. We've got one that we use for development only, and then we've got a production environment. So say, for instance, we create the connections in on our development side. Can you use that same connection that you've used on the development? Can you recreate it or copy it over or export it and import that on our production side, or do you have to create the connection from scratch again?
Unfortunately, no, because
Okay.
connection management does not work between instances. So there's no migration as of right now planned for connection management. But this could be a valuable feature. So I will definitely take that as a feature request. So what it can allow you to do is essentially just like how you migrate your ElastiCubes and dashboards, we can see if we can also make like migrating connections from connection manager a thing. But as of right now, it's not there. It could be a useful feature. One of the reasons why, and to be really honest with you, I'll give you a logical equation on why we typically don't do that, is if you have a dev instance, what most of our customers use is the dev instance has like more of a sample data or something that is like non-prod level, and they have like different databases, like a dev database and a prod database, let's say, for example. So everything is built on like demo data, but let's say in production, they actually switch to their real live data. So in those cases, it will be difficult to manage. So the other thing that connection management can do, and which is also a valid feature, let's say in dev, I was connected to the demo dashboard, demo database, and then I moved all of my assets to production, but the production must access the production database. So what I will do is I will go and edit the connection and change the existing credentials to be the prod credentials. Once I do that, all the ElastiCubes associated that were pointing to the demo database will now start pointing to the prod database. That makes sense. Like that.
Because we were doing it manually anyways. I just thought that maybe there's a easier way of reusing it. But that makes sense. Thanks.
I mean, yeah, you'll have to create it, but still, the thing would be that you'll have to create it only once. So that kind of helps, I think.
Yeah.
So you can just change the connection. So you still have to make the connection itself only once. So previously, you had to do it for each user that logs in. So let's say user A holds ElastiCube A and user B holds ElastiCube B. They both had to create their individual connections to continue working. With connection management, you don't have to do that. You just have to do one, give access to both the users, and they can continue working.
This definitely adds a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Now I'm really done. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you for your questions.
Good questions. Hey, how does this work with row and column level security?
Nothing changes for row level or column level security. Again, this is a layer way below that, right? This is essentially just a connection string. No matter who is bringing the connection from where, as long as the security is done on the tables, let's say, for example, it will stay there. We are not changing anything to the security or whatever. All we are changing is how this string that you create is stored. So it has no implication on anything else. It has no implication on translation, It has no implication on, I said, data security or dashboards or any kind of numbers, right? All we are doing is storing this string somewhere to be reused. So nothing changes in that case.
Perfect. Yeah, and you can share these connections with groups also, correct?
You can share it with groups. Given this one was shared with a group, but this is only good for people who are designers. So let's say if I start sharing it with a group that does not have data designer or has some data designers and the others are not designers, then in that case, the connection itself will only be shared with the data designers in the group. If that makes sense. And so in this case, I have a group here called designer, which only has one member right now, but you can definitely share it with a group.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Still waiting for more questions, if there are any.
Is it possible to export those perspectives with the ElastiCube and import them into another instance?
With like the shared connection itself?
Right. Like if you export the ElastiCube, can you export the perspectives along with it?
That's actually a great question.
No, never mind. I'm thinking of another feature. My bad.
No, that's actually a great question, and I'll explain.
Not connections.
You brought up like a good point. So another question that we do have is, let's say if I'm exporting an ElastiCube from instance A, and then I'm importing it in instance B, and I start building, as of right now, it continues to build fine without giving it a connection string, because what happens is that there is some form of connection that is available in the ElastiCube JSON that allows you to build. We are not changing that with connection management because that would be a breaking change and a lot of existing functionality will stop working. So just like before, if you export and import an ElastiCube, you can still build them without a shared connection. Once that is built, then you can create a new connection. It is still not like an existing connection that just stays there. So that is one of the things that we intentionally left out, intentionally did not make it a part of connection management, because that would be a breaking change. And a lot of users are currently using exporting and importing of ElastiCubes to actually continue building their work without like creating new connections. So that feature still exists. We are making no change to that feature.
Perfect.
I see something in chat. Okay. All right. So, all right. So I think we are done with the questions at this point. Going once, twice. Sold? Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining today's session. I hope this was really helpful for you and you'll start using connection management to the best of its extents.
Thank you, DJ. Very much appreciate your time today.